I want to introduce Weldon Nicely. Come on up, Weldon. Take your time. Weldon recently returned from Hebron, and he is with the Christian Peacemaker team, and he is also a retired Mennonite minister and a long-time social justice advocate who has traveled to Iraq and Palestine and has a lot to say about the need for internationalism in this world and what this regime means for people all over the world. So thank you very much, Weldon, for being with us.
Thank you, Margot, for your great wisdom and vision and leadership, and John and all of you for being here. No, I am not wearing a Make America Great cap. We will not let the rude and the crude, the violent and the vitriolic co-opt the cap that we have had long before it came out as America Great. Christian Peacemaker teams. I am with Christian Peacemaker teams in Iraq for several months a year and in Palestine. I just was there September, October. One day, just a few weeks ago, I was walking. We live in Old City Hebron, which is the most occupied and oppressed place in the West Bank. I had gone up some stairs in the old city to pay our electric bill, actually, and as I was coming out, an older Palestinian man was walking up the stairs, and as happens over and over every day, he asks, "What's your name and where are you from?" I usually say Seattle in the Northwest United States because I don't particularly like saying America. But everybody identifies with America. And then he welcomed me. And then he looked at me very sternly and he said, "Americans good, America bad." That's all he needed to say. He talked just a little bit more in the Arabic English that we could exchange. About a week before that, I was riding in a taxi, and the taxi driver says one word meant as a question, Trump. And we sort of roll our eyes and thumbs down, and he was very glad about that. And then he asked this question, Israel, America, why? And then as we could talk about it a little bit, again with our limited Arabic and English exchange, he was able to express, he said, "Why us? What have we done?" That is true for every Palestinian. What Christian Peacemaker Teams does in Old City Hebron is to work with partners to transform violence and oppression and to help the world see what most of us don't want to see, and particularly what our country doesn't want you to see, and to tell those stories and to show the pictures of the Palestinians. We work at the invitation of and in collaboration with Palestinians, Palestinian organizations committed to peace and nonviolence. One of our major tasks, and this is what I want to share primarily with you today, has to do with children. I am a father and a grandfather, and my 4 grandchildren, my children and grandchildren live here in Seattle, and are very, very precious. But what I want to live with my life, and what I want them to know, and what I want others to know, is that to love my children and grandchildren has everything to do with being with other children and grandchildren of the world. Because war is war on children. Children are the ones who suffer most. One of our primary tasks in Old City Hebron is to help navigate the several dozen checkpoints, especially in the morning. So from 7 to 8, every school morning, we are at 2 primary checkpoints where little children have to go through turnstiles and are completely at the mercy of the border police, Israeli border police, to get to school, to go through a checkpoint, to be searched, to be stopped, delayed, so that children are often up to an hour late for school. And then because there's settlers in the area, if settlers want to roam around that neighborhood, then the soldiers come around and make the school shut down. So settlers can have freedom without Palestinians being in the way. So it's incredibly hard to go to school. In addition to monitoring the checkpoints, we go to a kindergarten school that's right beside a checkpoint where there are now 12 kindergarten children, 5-year-olds, going to school. So every morning we are with them there as they come through. We accompany one of the little boys because he's afraid of the soldiers of going by that checkpoint. And then we go into the school and sit with them a little while and talk with them, and then come back at 11:30 to help them go home again. It is impossible to imagine without being there morning after morning. This has happened day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year. And it's hard to imagine without being there every morning and seeing what every little child has to go through just to get to school. And then what happens when they're at school, and occasionally there's tear gas and sound bombs thrown into schoolyards or even in the school, and to constantly be harassed, to constantly be under that oppression, and even sometimes to be detained and arrested. On one of the clashes one day, we're always out and monitoring. If the soldiers are out, we're out. I could tell you 1,000 stories. And on December 2 at Seattle Mennonite Church, I'll actually be showing these. And I welcome any other invitation with any group to show these stories and so on. But as one day at a clash, it had sort of quieted down, and it appeared the soldiers had gone back into the military base. But here's what they do. So we wander all around these alleyways and find groups of 3 soldiers hiding until youth come out or something. And in this case, we had just walked by a little alleyway, and I saw out of the corner of my eye 3 soldiers hiding over here. And we walked on further to the street, had just got there. When they came running out, they had signaled to others, and there were all small children. And within a matter of minutes, soldiers had accosted through the first little boy, the one I was closest to, was closer than me to Elaine here, was 9 years old. He looked 7. And he threw him against the wall, kneeled on his back, and held him, and then he detained 16 children from 9 to 16 years old for 4 hours. They were released then, but that we are monitoring all of that and then recording it and responding to. We're actually in part working with UNICEF, so we give all the official documentation of violence to children, oppression, and the way it works in that way. Well, I could tell you many other stories. I just want to end with this. For me, at least, as I understand it, it's profoundly important to be committed to nonviolence. The world is very violent, and the only answer has to do with how we do this work nonviolently. 2 very, very important works recently helped document that. Mark and Paul Engler's "This is an Uprising," and "This is an Uprising." And what we are doing together is an uprising. And what Mark and Paul Engler document over the past century is how well nonviolence has worked. It's just that most of us aren't committed enough or using enough to do that. Erica Chenoweth and Maria Stefan are the other 2. They're a highly documented, incredibly good book. Both of these are really, really important. Is Why Civil Resistance Worked. What they have done is gone back from 1900 to 2006 and monitored, closely examined 386 wars in the world. Every war that fit a certain category and profile, and what they found is that civil resistance, this work here, is twice as effective and 10 times as sustainable than any war or violence that is done. We have to know this and know how it works and be committed to it. Thank you very much.